So we're delighted to be here on Gadigal land. We're very privileged to live and work here, and it's always been a source of great pleasure and pride for us to be involved with the Indigenous people from this area and from every area around the country over the last 45 years. Now, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I want to thank especially the National Museum of Australia for lending several of the works in this show, and for the National Gallery of Australia for lending back this magnificent painting, Judgment by His Peers, which we sold to them during the last year, and which will be part of the National Gallery's display, and will, for the next God knows how long, forever, I guess, longer than any of us around. So having said that, I want to welcome Ray, are you coming up? And we're going to do a little welcome to country.
One guy, I am going to ask this beautiful young lady here to give us the acknowledgement of country tonight.
The mic's not on.
Yeah, it needs to be louder.
Oh, well, you have to talk.
You just got to.
Hi everyone, my name is Casey Blakeney. I'm a proud Yagal, Bundjalung and Dunghutti woman. I'm the granddaughter of Selena Blakeney, an elder from Woolloomooloo, who was a good friend of Gordon and Elaine. My nan used to perform welcomes regularly at various different events, so I'm very honoured to be here today, welcoming you all, continuing her legacy. I've known Gordon and Elaine since I was 3 years old. I've attended countless of Gordon's exhibitions. I've been involved and surrounded by his art for many years. As a 6-year-old, I gave my first welcome at Gordon's exhibition in Newtown in 2013. I even have the pleasure of owning a beautiful original painting of a ballerina called the Black Ballerina. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, and recognise their continuing connection to the land, the water and the community. I'd like to pay respects to elders both past and present, also extending that respect to all First Nations people here today. I hope you all have a lovely night. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Jeff McMullen, who's going to be our Master of Ceremonies this evening.
Thank you, Adrian. Casey, for your beautiful introduction. And Will, straight to the heart as always, my brother. That's put the spirit into this room tonight, and my brother here and I were talking outside saying we don't have enough of this now, of being this close and being intimate with the Aboriginal narrative that is in this art tonight. I'm thrilled to be here with you to share some of the story, but also to pass on the appreciation of artists around this country who've sent messages, because they all know that Gordon paved the way. You were the first, my brother. You and your work have certainly, with the razor edge of your palette knife and your deadly paintbrush, you have captured the story of invasion, the first stolen land, as Casey has reminded us that we are on Gadigal land, and it was here, of course, that the theft of the land began. And in capturing that invasion story, there is not a moment in this country that someone will not look into your paintings and be moved in their conscience to know the truth, because your work it's a call for truth and justice, and your paintings speak to the necessity of recognition and of responsibly honouring the ancestral story that, as Casey reminds us, those longer timelines, the custodianship here for countless millennia. As a storyteller myself and a journalist, when I would walk into the old ABC studios at Oslo, I would often stand there transfixed when I would look up, and there was one of the Wildflower series. And you could go to the National Gallery or the New South Wales Art Gallery or to a wall on Parliament House, and each time I've seen people standing and thinking so deeply about your work. Nonetheless, I was surprised to come across a book, and on the cover of this book about poetry, I saw your paintings. And I was even more surprised that the author's name on this book was of an American literature professor at my wife's old alma mater, the University of Maryland.
Wow.
And I began to think that maybe you can judge a book by its cover with this great painting, because I discovered that this American, obviously a wanderer with an open mind and an open heart, had come to appreciate your work and the power of your work, because Professor Jason Rudy, who is here from across the sea to launch this retrospective, had realised that through your art he could help tell the world, now as your biographer, working on your life's work and your life story, he could tell the world about what the Invasion series was all about. He could explore the impact through literature and art of the colonial damage and of how to this day the trauma across generations remains in this country. So it is my great honour to introduce to you tonight from across in Maryland, the United States of America, Professor Jason Rudy.
Wow.
Good evening. It's such an incredible honor and pleasure to be here tonight to celebrate Uncle Gordon's work and to officially open this retrospective, Syron's Wars. My name is Jason Rudy. I'm a professor of English from the University of Maryland, and I've always been grateful to be welcomed here in Australia, and in particular on Gadigal land in the city of Sydney. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners and their custodianship of these lands on which we meet tonight, and pay my respect to their ancestors and their descendants. And I would additionally like to acknowledge the Piscataway people, whose ancestral lands encompass much of the state of Maryland, where I live and work. Over the last several years, while researching the biography Gordon and Elaine asked me to write, I have heard consistently from those I've interviewed how deeply, how profoundly Gordon Syron has influenced the Australian art world. Indigenous artists across multiple generations have testified to me about the crucial role Gordon has played in their own development. Not only their development as artists, but as politically aware artists, artists emboldened to take risks and speak the truths that art at its greatest has the capacity to speak. I remember vividly my own first encounter with a Syron painting and the political truths I immediately perceived in that moment. It was 2007, almost 20 years ago, and I had just arrived in Sydney for the first time, along with a class of 18 college students from the States. These are students I was responsible for. It was terrifying. We went to the Museum of Sydney, and there found ourselves standing in front of Syron's extraordinary Invasion series. New to Australia, but familiar enough, I thought, with the history of British Empire, I was first struck by the gorgeous, deep blues of the canvas, and then the details began to take shape. The ships of the British First Fleet, the skeletal redcoats, whose uniforms are reflected with a blood-like hue in the water of Sydney Harbour, and then the silhouetted indigenous spectators bearing witness to the invasion of this continent. How powerful the shift of perspective, the mental somersault demanded by Syron's vision, the pivot from a triumphant narrative of empire to one of anti-colonial resistance. Like many of Syron's canvases, the invasion series grabs hold of the spectator. It grabbed hold of me. Think again, his work insists. Look more carefully. And I say these words standing right next to Judgment by His Peers, which more than almost any of his other canvases does that work of demanding a reconsideration, a deeper thinking. And it is such an honor to be here, I can hardly say. So in the last 2 weeks, leading up to this evening, as my country has launched yet another unnecessary war in yet another part of the world, I have been reflecting on the title of this retrospective and what it asks of us as attendees. Syron's Wars. Unlike wars of aggression, such as what we've seen recently in Venezuela and Iran, Syron's wars are wars of resistance. Resistance to systemic inequities, whose histories reach back to the initial invasion of this continent. Syron's life work calls out and resists the indigenous dispossession and genocide of the 18th and 19th centuries. It resists the continued horrors of the modern era, the stolen generations, a legal system grossly racist in its structure, and persistent inequities in education, healthcare, and political representation. One thinks of the struggle against apartheid in South Africa and against enslavement in the American Civil War. Like those conflicts, Syron's wars are just wars. Wars that we all ought to feel compelled to fight, and that Syron's paintings call out for each of us to fight. But it isn't only resistance we find in Syron's canvases. I find there as well deep optimism and empathy. An empathy and optimism rooted in the belief that change is possible. Jury by His Peers, here tonight representing the earliest period of Syron's career, succeeds as a painting in part because it believes deeply in the capacity for human change. What I mean is, the painting works under the premise that once the structures of racism are made evident, once we see that racial inequity of any kind is fundamentally unjust, then human beings will want to change those structures, will want to do something about the inequity. Great art can play the role of truth teller in a world that often wants to avoid the most difficult truths. And Gordon Syron is an artist truth teller extraordinaire, pushing us to see what's difficult and inspiring us to do something about it. I consider myself fortunate to have learned both from him directly and from his art, and I trust that all of you here tonight feel similarly. I welcome you then to this retrospective. I thank everyone who's had a hand in making it possible, most especially John Mundine, Adrian Newstead, and of course, Gordon and Elaine. It is a joy to be here with you all and to celebrate Gordon's powerful work.
And so good to be here.
Thank you, Jason. To bring together such an extraordinary collection required curators who are equally extraordinary. And I think the combination of Adrian Newstead, his team, and the amazing Jean Mundine, the man in the beret, the man who has traveled the world, the man who has told half the world how Aboriginal people see and think, and regard time, even in a broken world. Jean, will you please come and share your thoughts on the selection of these paintings and a little about how this story goes back to the very beginning of Gordon's painting in a prison cell.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. I am standing up.
And you're going to become at some time because there are people upstairs.
Yes, okay, I will speak louder and cut short. What's that?
See your lovely face.
Oh, you want to,
We just want to see your face now.
all right, well, you can see the top of my head anyway. Yeah, thank you. All right, I'll do with Jimi Hendrix, you have to put the mic down his throat. My name is John and Diane, and thank you for those compliments. This was a very difficult thing to take on, but I really wanted to do this. And people said, why did you come and work with these people? Why did you? Because it was a difficult thing. But I followed these couple, Gordon and Elaine, to Sydney, to other places in Australia, where they kept their collection together. They kept the faith, and they kept word, his message, for something like 40 years or something. I followed them and saw them in different places, and I really wanted this event to happen. I wanted this famous artwork, this stimulating, really key piece in Australian art to be collected by an institution like the National Gallery. I wanted to be there, and it would do justice to the fact of Gordon and Elaine's belief in their voice, and by their presence, I always thought that famous saying, I irritate, therefore I exist. But certainly, I think the three of us, in that sense, have really irritated other galleries, etc., to make this happen. To believe in something, you have to believe in something and live it. Not being part of, not joining an institution. Gordon was already part of an institution. It was called the Loan. It was the prison complex. That's an institution. And that's brutal. It's soul destroying. It's incredibly hard on your psyche, especially if you feel you've been wrongly put there. I've run courses in places like Goulburn and Long Bay and other places. It's really, really incredible to see people change their attitude and believe they have a voice, that they are, may not speak the best English, but they become articulate through their art. I think Simon Sharma or somebody did a really big series for the BBC called The Power of Art, an incredible production. Well, this production by Gordon Syron is even more amazing because he didn't have the money, he didn't have the respect of other people. He still continued just to keep pushing on and saying, this is an Aboriginal message, this is the Aboriginal message. When we end up with people like, and inspired people like Archie Moore, who won the Golden Lion medal in Venice last year, the first time Australia has won that in 80 years. It was an Aboriginal man from a little tin pot town in Western Queensland, and key of that was the over 500 reports and commissions on Aboriginal death in custody and incarceration. And that was the centre point of that piece, and it was that truth, that statement, that actually won him and us international recognition to tell the truth. Being a curator is neither here nor there. I get to wear a white shirt because I know I'm the good guy. And I was really heartened to see people like William Barton and other people again who really struggled to say we are somebody. I am intelligent, I am talented, I know music, I know philosophy. I may not be able to articulate it incredibly as much as other people with wigs and whatever, but we do know it, and I'm so happy that this has finally come to be. You can. Thank you.
Gordon and Elaine asked one last favour to share with you this evening. I'd ask Pastor Ray Minicon to come up and join in for this. Many of you would know, come up here, my brother, that through decades, a small merry band, brothers and sisters, painters, singers, preachers, worked very hard from shed to shed, exhibition to exhibition. Casey, who gave the acknowledgement of Country Tonight, was a very small child at one of these evenings so long ago. But it was all about finding a keeping place, a national keeping place that would take the extraordinary collection that Gordon, and through the photographer's eye of Elaine, a wonderful eye on our civil rights period for decades, that the politics of this art would be appreciated by keeping it together, like you keep a community together through art and music and the spirit, as Ray knows. But Gordon turns 85 this year. Elaine is 81. And they cannot carry crates and big paintings and load trucks and shift from shed to shed. So the keeping place has not happened. But we're here tonight to share a thought or two about why a keeping place of any sort is important to keep the spirit of the people of this land breathing strong for millennia to come. And Ray, you said to me earlier this evening that we don't do this enough now.
No. And I want to say thank you to Gordon, because you brought back the spirit of the 70s, 60s, the 80s, when we were together as a people. And we were fighting for the same thing. This society always was, always will be the Aboriginal land. We've lost a little bit of that focus, but this exhibition here has brought that back. For me and my spirit, I feel so encouraged, so incredibly inspired to go forward again and seek justice for our people. There is one quote, a couple of quotes I'd like to say that seem to summarise, for me anyways, what these artworks mean. Now, there is one institution in this country, one non-Indigenous institution, that really summarised these artworks. They put them into words, artists put them into these incredible paintings. But it takes us way back to the beginning. And this is a High Court decision. One is the Mabo decision, which said that, declared actually, that all Indigenous peoples are entitled as against the whole world to possession, occupation, use and enjoyment of the lands of their ancestors. The spirit of that is in these. What they have said in words, Uncle has put into paintings, into his art. He said it all. But there was also another High Court decision back in 2022 or 3 that really helped us to identify who we are as Indigenous peoples in this country. It was the Love and Trump versus the Commonwealth. And it says these three declarations. I declare that all Indigenous peoples are not outsiders or foreigners in their own lands. They are the descendants of the first peoples of their country, the original inhabitants, and they are to be recognised as such. I want to also declare that none of the events of invasion, settlement, federation, or the event of foreign citizenship laws have displaced the unique positions of Indigenous peoples with their lands. And finally, I want to declare that Indigenous peoples have a unique connection to their country. It is not just ancestry or place of birth or even both. Indigenous peoples have a connection with the land, waters and skies under Indigenous laws and customs. And no imposed Citizenship Act has removed or modified that connection. No parliament or foreign government has removed or modified that connection by any other laws or legislation. Courtie, you've summarised what the High Court has said in your artwork. And we believe you, we've always believed you, and you've brought us back to the beginning again, to our struggles for justice and our struggles for a way forward, especially for young people. And like, we're here tonight with John and all the others. They are the reminders of our past, of where we come from, what we've been fighting for, and what we continue to fight for. And one of the things that I'd like us to go away with, if you've got a few dollars, if you've got a property, or anything of that nature, we need a keeping place.
Yes.
We desperately need a keeping place for this artwork. So if you have cousins or uncles or aunties, tell them you need this desperately so that we can go into these places and remember who we are, where we come from, and what we're standing for. Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And a keeping place may not be a building. A keeping place for the Gordon and Elaine Syron collection may well be a virtual keeping place. Certainly Elaine wants very much to see those political paintings and the beauty and the diversity of that collection into a book. So that's a project that is in their minds. It's a dream, it needs support. But the bigger dream that Ray speaks of can happen. There may be someone young in this room who understands the new age we've moved into in the 21st century, where people can create a keeping place in the cloud. I'm not so trusting of the clouds because we get skies like today, or skies with oily rain like in Iran, but I may be wrong. We only thought of an old shed somewhere, and a shed that people would visit so often that they were confronted and transfixed by the power of this art. Many of those paintings from that original collection have been worked into this retrospective. It is thanks to Adrian Newstead, to Jean, to Casey, to Will, to my brother Ray, and everybody attending here tonight that we keep the spirit of the Aboriginal struggle alive. Thank you very much for being part of it tonight.
Thank you to all our speakers, every one of you, and thanks to everyone that was involved in putting this exhibition together. It is a wonderful tribute to everybody. The paintings in this exhibition have been specifically chosen because they represent the different themes that run through Gordon's work over the last 40 years. We selected some of the finest works for the show, and other than the works that were on loan from the National Museum and the National Gallery, the works are for sale. We're hoping to place some of them into important institutional collections, but there's some lovely small works that if you or your friends or somebody you recommend wants to own an original work by Gordon Syron, there are some absolutely stunning small works here that are really historically significant, and they're rare. they're not, you won't find millions of them like you'll find Gloria Pachari's or even Emily and Warry's, or to own a work by Gordon Syron is a joy indeed and a very rare and very, very important pleasure. So do tell your friends. This show is on for a month. It's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to put it on. Please send as many people as you can in to see it. It's a very, very special show.
And look who we have here.
And I want to introduce everyone to Jasmine Smith, who's done an absolutely incredible job in producing this catalogue and working on this show. And it's really, we're indeed very fortunate.
Thank you,
Adrian, we also must remind everyone to keep your eye open for Jason Rudy's biography, which is going to be a little time yet. But Jason, thank you for travelling across the sea. Thank you for writing your biography. I will make sure we are all there. I hope that we have a launch together in the very near future. Thank you for being here. Thanks, everyone.